Let's get back to one of our top stories, the blockades and protests that have stalled rail service across the country. Many people taking part in those protests and blockades are standing in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs who oppose a gas pipeline being built in northern BC. Joining us now from our Vancouver studio is Clifford White. He is one of the Gitxaala Nation's 23 hereditary chiefs and a board member for the First Nations LNG Alliance. Clifford, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Marilla.
Now, you are on the other side of things. You actually support this gas line. Tell me why.
Well, as the elected chief councillor back in the day, we met with our hereditary leaders, elders, and we came to a consensus that this would be good for our community.
Good for your community.
There's
how?
Jobs and employment, education. There was a fleet of issues that we had agreed to. Yeah.
Okay, so there are some, obviously, who will see this as forward-thinking. What in your community is missing that perhaps you see this pipeline or opportunities from this pipeline providing?
Well, I think for the Indigenous communities across the country, we have a new platform by which our governance or self-determination can take place through this reconciliation, through the UNDRIP that has been passed here in BC and hopefully across Canada as well. There's a number of opportunities that we are seeking, as well as the definition of our defining what our governance structure actually looks like.
So there are other First Nations, I imagine, who have benefited from agreements like this. Have you had a chance personally to see any of that?
Well, across the pipeline corridor, there are 20 First Nations that have signed agreements with CGL. But I think the issue that's going on right now is much larger than that. It's a historical issue that has just carried on up until today.
What is your thought about the protests and the blockades?
You know, the Indigenous communities have been so patient with regards to, the relationship that we have with Canada and with British Columbia. Those issues need to be resolved. We need to get to the tables. There's an opportunity at the negotiation tables for our people to bring some resolution to these with the provincial federal governments.
Have you faced criticism for supporting the pipeline?
Internally, we've had our debates within Gitxaala Nation, with our hereditary, with our elders, community members. We got pretty much full consensus, but there are some people that have were objecting to it.
And what do you say? What were the arguments you gave them in favor for this or to allay their concerns?
It's not crude oil that we're looking at. We are looking at liquid natural gas, which two totally different forms of gas pipelines that are going through, and we've been assured that the pipeline was not going to be used for oil. And so the environment is the number one concern that we have, and we want to make sure that the environment is kept clean. We have a word for that, which is Includaximlachiu, which is our sacred spiritual grounds, our sacred spiritual territory. We take that seriously when we're looking at how any economic development is going to be happening within our territory.
So how does this fit then within that school of thought about the sacred territory?
A lot of that is taken into consideration in negotiating with SIA and the BC Environmental Assessment Office, and taking those issues into consideration, bringing it to our hereditary table and our elected chief and council, which work hand in hand with each other on these issues. There's a process for us for that.
So has there been discussion with Coastal GasLink about rejigging that pipeline route, in fact, to rest the concerns of some of the other hereditary chiefs who don't agree with it going through their territory?
You know, that's really up to the Coastal GasLink along with the First Nations. I really can't comment on that other than, you know, we would provide whatever support that we could through the First Nations LNG Alliance to try to bring those communities and Coastal GasLink together.
Let me ask you about the Prime Minister's decision to not take a trip to the Caribbean, but instead to stay, meet with his own ministers and try and work a way forward on this issue. What is your take on that?
I think that is a really good decision that he has made to enter into debates with our First Nations communities. If anything, this is one positive step forward for all of our people. And that's something that the Indigenous people have been asking for a long time, historically, to get the province and the federal government together at the tables to define First Nations rights and title.
Clifford White, sir, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Marella.
Take care.